I woke to the sound of screaming metal. Catherine Dunn's massive 2025 Suburban was buried in my front yard, tires spinning, mud launching like shrapnel across the grass I'd spent years perfecting. Neighbors rushed out, phones up, recording the chaos as Catherine stumbled from the driver's seat, heels sinking, shouting my name like I'd trapped her. One of my new planters lay shattered under her bumper flowers, crushed against the chrome. She pointed at me, furious, breathless. "Dylan, you're going to pay for this." But as I stepped off the porch, calm as a man who already knew the ending, her expression changed because she finally realized none of this was an accident, and she wasn't the one holding the power anymore. Catherine Dunn wasn't just an HOA president, she was a walking traffic cone in human form. Bright, loud, impossible to ignore, and somehow always standing exactly where she didn't belong. You could see her before you heard her, usually wrapped in some blinding pastel outfit, oversized sunglasses perched on her head, like she was auditioning for a reality show about petty dictators. She ran our neighborhood with the confidence of someone who'd never been told no. If a trash bin lingered 6 minutes past pickup, Catherine knew. If a mailbox leaned half an inch off center, Catherine measured it. She once fined a retired couple because their wind chimes were emotionally disruptive. Nobody even knew that was a rule until she wrote it. Her defining moment, though, came the day she stopped a jogger mid-stride to scold him for running off tempo with the community aesthetic. She didn't enforce rules, she invented them, and people feared her for it. But Catherine had a specific kind of target she loved most: quiet neighbors. People who minded their business. People who didn't push back. People like me. I kept my lawn neat. I kept to myself, and I didn't attend her HOA wine socials where complaints flowed like cheap Chardonnay. To Catherine, that wasn't neutrality, it was defiance. And nothing rattled her more than someone she couldn't control. So when she started treating my lawn like her personal shortcut, it wasn't random. It was intentional. And it was only the beginning. I moved to Willow Bend for the same reason most people move to quiet suburbs: space, a little peace, and the chance to build something that felt like mine. For me, that something was my lawn. Sounds simple, but after years of apartment living, having real earth to shape was the closest thing I'd had to therapy. Saturday mornings became a ritual: mowing, perfect stripes, trimming edges, razor-clean watching a plain patch of grass turn into something orderly in a world that rarely was. For a while, life here fit exactly how I imagined it. Neighbors waved, kids biked past, sprinklers ticked in the distance. If there were small HOA quirks, I ignored them. I wasn't here to join committees or debate mailbox colors. I just wanted calm. The first crack in that calm appeared one morning in early March. The storm from the night before had left the ground soft enough to record anything that touched it, and that's when I saw them, 2 faint tire tracks cutting across the front edge of my lawn. Subtle, almost accidental looking, I crouched down, ran my hand along the grooves, telling myself it could have been a delivery truck or some teenager cutting corners. A one-off mistake. Then it happened again, and again. A precise angle every time, slicing through the same spot like someone had plotted it on a map. Each new track carved a little deeper, shredding what I'd spent years building. The odd part wasn't just the damage, it was the silence. Neighbors who usually chatted kept their answers short when I brought it up. A couple avoided eye contact entirely. It felt like everyone knew something I didn't. The dread turned into suspicion when the pattern became clockwork. Between 7:15 and 7:30 a.m., regardless of weather, those tracks appeared like a signature. Intentional, predictable, personal. That's when I realized I needed proof. I wasn't a confrontational guy. I didn't want to accuse anyone without evidence, so I bought a cheap motion-activated camera and placed it near my mailbox. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I was doing something, taking back a little control. But deep down, I already knew the truth. Whoever was doing this wasn't careless. They were confident. Too confident. And that meant the real fight hadn't even started yet. The first week after installing the camera felt like waiting for a storm you could smell, but couldn't see. Every morning I checked the footage, and every morning I found the same thing: tire marks deeper, now curving across my lawn like a signature meant to taunt me. The odd part, I still never saw the driver in person. Whoever it was kept slipping by in that tight 15-minute window when I was getting ready for work. Then the HOA letters started. At first it was almost funny, almost. A crisp envelope informing me that my lawn quality had deteriorated below neighborhood standards. The same lawn someone was carving like a racetrack. I asked a neighbor about it while we both grabbed our mail, but he shifted uncomfortably, muttered something about not wanting to get involved, and hurried inside. The damage wasn't random anymore. It was scheduled, consistent. The kind of harassment built to make you feel helpless. And it was working until the camera finally caught her. Layer 2. Boundary violation, 187 words. The first time I opened the footage and saw Catherine's Suburban roll into frame, I actually froze. There she was, HOA royalty herself, cutting across my lawn like it was a scenic detour, sunglasses on, one wrist dangling casually over the steering wheel. A smirk on her face like the destruction beneath her tires was an inside joke only she found funny. The next day, she did it slower, as if to make sure the camera caught her angle. The day after that, she waved. Actually waved. A smug little flick of her fingers straight toward my house. And then came the second violation letter. This one claimed my hedges were encroaching into community space, even though they hadn't grown an inch since winter. I tried confronting her during the monthly cleanup event, but she brushed me off with that sugary, condescending tone she used on neighbors she considered beneath her. When I mentioned the footage, she didn't deny it, she dismissed it. Those cameras glitch all the time, Dylan. Be careful accusing people. It reflects poorly. That was the moment she crossed from nuisance to threat. By week 3, my lawn didn't look like a lawn anymore. It looked like a construction site hit by a runaway bulldozer. The once sharp mow lines I'd cared for religiously were now warped into muddy trenches. Every time I stepped outside, I felt a knot forming in my chest. Anger, humiliation, helplessness, mixing into something sharp. Then she hit my mailbox. Not a full collision, just a clip from her oversized bumper as she powered through the same shortcut she'd carved. The impact tilted it at a ridiculous angle, like a drunk leaning against a wall. She didn't even pause, just kept driving, coffee in hand. The next HOA notice accused me of failure to maintain mailbox alignment. At the HOA meeting where I presented my footage, Catherine flipped the script so fast it made my head spin. She claimed the video was doctored, said I'd been combative, said I was lashing out because I struggled with community standards. A few neighbors snickered. One even rolled his eyes. Humiliation flooded my stomach as I walked out of that meeting. She had turned my evidence into a joke and me into the punchline. But humiliation is funny. It burns. And when it burns long enough, it hardens. That night, my resolve solidified. Catherine escalated. Of course she did. Bullies always do when they smell hesitation. I came home one evening to find not one but 3 new HOA notices taped to my door: trash bin, visibility, potential tripping hazard in my yard, a pebble, probably, and a warning about unapproved ornamentation on my porch. She was throwing the entire HOA handbook at me. Then came the email, a formal threat of fines and further legal action if I continued manufacturing hostility. That was her mistake. Because while she was firing off threats, I was studying. I read municipal codes like bedtime stories. I downloaded HOA bylaws. I called city offices. I learned exactly what I could do and exactly what she couldn't stop. And slowly, quietly, the neighborhood started watching. People began to notice the pattern. They whispered. They recorded their own evidence. The power Catherine thought she controlled was beginning to slip, and she didn't see it. The trap I set wasn't dramatic. It wasn't violent. It wasn't even confrontational. It was tasteful landscaping. A row of heavy, beautifully arranged planters right along the strip Catherine used as her shortcut. Perfectly legal, perfectly documented, and just inconvenient enough to turn her daily joyride into an obstacle course. The morning she encountered them was everything I'd imagined. Her Suburban rolled up at exactly 7:21 a.m., like always. She slowed the moment she saw the planter's confusion first, then offense, then that look of entitlement she wore so naturally. She tried squeezing through anyway. Gravel crunched. Her bumper kissed a planter. A spray of soil popped into the air. Across the street, Mara had her phone up. Hector zoomed in from his truck. Mr. Patel literally sipped coffee while filming. Catherine climbed out red-faced, pointing at the planters like they'd personally insulted her. She demanded I remove them, threatened fines, threatened meetings, threatened everything. But this time, the neighborhood wasn't on her side, and someone no one knows who sent the video to the entire HOA email list. Within hours it spread. Within a day, it became the talk of Willow Bend. Within a week, Catherine's reputation began to crack, and the real fight was about to begin. The HOA called an emergency meeting the following Thursday. Catherine's attempt to regain control before the video swallowed her whole. The room was packed. Neighbors who hadn't attended a meeting in years suddenly found seats in the front row. Phones were tucked discreetly in hands waiting. Catherine stormed in, last posture, stiff hair, lacquered into place like armor. She carried a thick folder under her arm, dramatic, theatrical, exactly her style. The moment the meeting opened, she launched into a speech laced with legal jargon and self-righteous rage. Due to a homeowner's reckless landscaping choices, she announced a board member, myself, was endangered. This behavior constitutes harassment, obstruction, and a violation of community standards. Murmurs rippled across the room. Someone actually snorted. I sat in the second row silent, letting her monologue build like a house made of wet cardboard, impressive until you touched it. Catherine stabbed a finger toward me. I moved that the board order immediate removal of the planters and issue fines for endangering HOA members. For the first time, the board hesitated. Eyes darted, papers shifted. Catherine looked around, confused. Because the room wasn't leaning toward her, it was leaning toward the truth. I stood slowly calm, holding a slim binder and a thumb drive. Before any vote, I said, "There's something everyone needs to see." I walked to the projector, plugged in the drive, and tapped play. The room fell silent. On the screen, Catherine's Suburban attempting her shortcut. Gravel spraying, planter tipping, her stumbling out, pointing wildly at my yard, her yelling something indistinguishable but unmistakably furious. The room erupted in whispers. I clicked again. Another clip. Her car carving tracks through my lawn. Again. And again. 7 sequential mornings. 7 identical shortcuts. I set down printed city code documentation. Permits. Emails from zoning officials confirming the legality of the planters. Receipts from the landscaper. And just so there's no confusion, I said softly, "This is the notice she sent me 2 days after hitting my mailbox." I held up a violation letter accusing me of negligent lawn care. Laughter broke out, actual unfiltered laughter. Catherine surged to her feet, face blotchy. "These videos are manipulated. This is character assassination. He is destabilizing the HOA." But the room wasn't buying it, because a third neighbor stood. Then a fourth, each raising a phone showing their own recording of the same event from different angles. Her denial evaporated on contact. The board huddled in a quick, frantic whisper. For once, Catherine wasn't invited into the circle. When they finally turned around, the president pro tem cleared his throat. "Effective immediately," he said, "the board is suspending Catherine Dunn from all enforcement duties, pending review of conduct." Catherine's jaw dropped. "You can't. We just did." She spun toward the audience, searching for an ally, but no one met her eyes. Not even the people who used to trail her like shadows. 2 days later, Catherine filed a complaint in small claims court, her last attempt to claw power back. She arrived in a tailored suit, pearls and indignation sharpened to a knife. She accused me of harassment, obstruction, defamation, you name it, but the judge watched the videos, all of them, unedited, clear as day. "Miss Dunn," the judge said, removing his glasses, "you drove across this man's lawn repeatedly. You caused damage." He responded legally and reasonably. "Your claim is without merit. Dismissed. Fees owed to me." Catherine left the courtroom pale and silent. By the next HOA meeting, she'd resigned for personal reasons. Her Suburban avoided my street completely. Her once blinding confidence dimmed into something small, something quiet, and the neighborhood finally exhaled. Because the reign of Catherine Dunn was over. In the weeks after Catherine's downfall, the neighborhood felt lighter. The tension that always hovered around HOA events dissipated, replaced by something almost foreign: friendliness. People waved longer. Conversations lasted more than a polite nod. A neighbor even brought over a pie, a first in the 3 years I'd lived there. My lawn began to heal too. Fresh seed filled the scars she'd carved. The grass came in thicker than before, almost as if determined to reclaim what had been taken. The planters bloomed in full color, turning the corner of my yard into a bright, calm border that felt both protective and symbolic. And, interestingly, people seemed drawn to them. A couple walking their dog stopped one morning and said, "Beautiful work, Dylan." Really changed the whole street. For the first time in a long while, I felt proud not just of the lawn, but of the dignity I'd managed to hold on to. I'd defended myself without screaming matches or sabotage. I'd let the truth and Catherine's own behavior do the heavy lifting. Catherine herself became a ghost. She no longer strutted through the neighborhood like she owned it. She took quieter routes, shorter walks, no sunglasses, no clipboard. Her Suburban stayed parked most days, gathering a thin layer of pollen that nobody thought to wipe off. The woman who once thrived on attention now avoided even the smallest crowd. Power, I realized, isn't just lost, it drains slowly every time someone stops pretending they fear you. The official fallout didn't stop at the courtroom. The HOA board held a special session where Catherine's conduct was reviewed. 3 neighbors submitted statements, 2 submitted videos, and 1 elderly couple admitted they'd been too intimidated to speak up about her past behavior. That was the tipping point. The board issued a formal censure, a rare move. It stripped her of committee eligibility for 2 years, required restitution for the mailbox damage, and recommended a third-party audit of HOA practices. Quietly, they also rewrote enforcement policies, adding checks so no single member could issue repeated violations without oversight. One of the board members pulled me aside afterward. "You did more than protect your yard," he said. "You exposed a flaw in the system. We should have caught it sooner. I didn't need a medal. I just needed fairness." And for the first time, the neighborhood finally felt headed in that direction. Even city code enforcement reached out a courtesy call, informing me that my documentation and landscaping choices were fully compliant. The officer chuckled and said, "We've heard about your planters. Quite the creative solution," I shrugged, smiling. Sometimes the simplest solutions hurt the most. About a month after everything settled, a moving truck pulled into the house at the end of the block. A young couple stepped out, waving at me as if we already knew each other. "You're Dylan, right?" the husband asked. I nodded. He grinned. "The guy who stood up to Catherine." "Man, we heard the whole story." I laughed, shaking their hands, offering to help unload a box or two. It was surreal going from anonymous neighbor to something like a quiet legend. Not because I'd fought loudly, but because I'd fought smart. Later that evening, I walked the lawn, checking the new growth, brushing stray leaves from the planters. The sun dipped low, casting a warm gold across the yard. For the first time in a long stretch of chaos, the place felt peaceful again, not just in appearance, but in spirit. I paused at the edge of the grass, looking down the street. Catherine's house sat quiet, porch light off, curtains drawn. Her Suburban didn't move an inch. She wasn't defeated by me, not really. She was defeated by the weight of her own arrogance. People like Catherine build kingdoms out of fear. Once the fear is gone, the kingdom falls on its own. As I set the hose down and admired the stripes on my freshly cut lawn, I realized something important I hadn't won because I fought her. I'd won because I refused to become her. Justice doesn't always come in courtrooms. Sometimes it grows slowly and quietly, in a row of planters that nobody ever forgets.